Hello, boys and girls. I've decided that I'm going to read a chapter a day. This is a new book that I've never read, and it's called the BFG, the Big Friendly Giant. And I know that movie's out, but I just thought it'd be interesting to read this book. Okay, so I'm going to read this book to you. So here's the beginning part. It says captured by a giant. And you don't have to watch the video. You can just lay and listen like we do in our teacher read at school. So the BFG is no ordinary bone crushing giant. He is far too nice and jumbly. It's lucky for Sophie that he is. Had she been carried off in the middle of the night by a blood bottler or any other giant than the BFG, she would have soon become breakfast. When Sophie hears that the giants are flush bunking off to England to swamp a few nice little childers, she decides she must stop them once and for all, and the BFG is going to help her. So this seems like a pretty interesting book. I've never read this book, okay? So here's a list of some of the other books by this author. All right. And here's some of the, okay. So this is the chapters. It looks like it's got quite a few chapters. What I thought was interesting, the characters in this book, humans, the Queen of England, Mary the Queen's maid, Mr. Tibbs, the palace butler, the head of the army, the head of the Air Force, and of course Sophie, an orphan. Then there's giants, the flesh lump eater, the bone cruncher, the man hugger, and the child chewer. Oh, there's more. The meat dripper, the gizzard gulper, the maid masher, the blood bottler, the butcher boy, and of course the BFG. This sounds like it's going to be pretty interesting. And I'm just going to do a chapter a day. And I might do like one chapter in the morning and send to you, and one chapter in the evening and send to you. The witching hour. Sophie couldn't sleep. A brilliant moonbeam was slanting through a gap in the curtains. It was shining right on her pillow. The other children in the dormitory had been asleep for hours. Sophie closed her eyes and lay quite still. She tried very hard to doze off. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room on her face. The house was absolutely silent. No voices came up from downstairs. There were no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the curtain was wide open, but nobody was walking on the pavement outside. No cars went by on the street. Not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophie had never known such a silence. Perhaps, she told herself, this was what they called the witching hour. The witching hour, somebody had once whispered to her, was a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep, and all of the dark things came out from hiding and had the world to themselves. The moonbeam was brighter than ever on Sophie's pillow. She decided to get out of bed and close the gap in the curtains. You got punished if you were caught out of your bed after lights out. Even if you said you had to go to the lavatory. What do you think that is, boys and girls? The lavatory. That was not accepted as an excuse, and they punished you just the same. The lavatory is the bathroom. But there was no one about now. Sophie was sure of that. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her bed. They had steel rims and very thick lenses, and she could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on, then she slipped out of bed and tiptoed over to the window. When she reached the curtains, Sophie hesitated. She longed to duck underneath them and lean out of the window to see what the world looked like now that the witching hour was at hand. She listened again. Everywhere it was deathly still. The longing to look out became so strong she couldn't resist it. Quickly she ducked under the curtains and leaned out of the window. In the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so well seemed completely different. The houses looked bent and crooked, like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the road she could see Mrs. Rant's shop where you bought buttons and wool and bits of elastic. It didn't look real. There was something dim and misty about that too. Sophie allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street. Suddenly she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was something black, something tall and black, something very tall and very black and very thin.